The morning air hung heavy with mist as Samuel Grady trudged through the endless pine woods, his old hunting rifle slung across his shoulder and his hound, Duke, padding quietly beside him. Samuel had lived most of his 40 years alone in the wilderness, ever since the war took his brothers and disease took his wife. Life had become simple: hunt, trade, survive. The silence was his companion, and Duke was his only family. But that silence was about to be broken forever. The sun had barely touched the tops of the trees when Duke stopped dead in his tracks, his nose twitching and his ears perked. Samuel frowned, raising his rifle slightly. "What is it, boy?" he muttered. Duke let out a low growl, then darted toward the thick brush ahead. Samuel followed quickly, his boots sinking into the damp ground. The dog barked again, this time frantic, leading Samuel to a small clearing by the creek. There, lying in the frost-kissed grass, was a woman. Her dress was torn, her skin pale as snow, and her lips quivered as though she were whispering to ghosts. Samuel's breath caught in his chest. He dropped his rifle and knelt beside her, feeling for a pulse. It was faint, like the dying flutter of a trapped bird. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he asked, his voice low but urgent. The woman's eyes flickered open, blue as the winter sky. "Help, please," she whispered. Samuel didn't hesitate. He wrapped his coat around her frail body, lifted her into his arms, and carried her through the woods back toward his cabin. Duke trotted ahead, barking anxiously, as if urging his master to move faster. By the time Samuel reached his cabin, the woman was barely conscious. He laid her gently on his bed, lit the fire, and fetched warm water. He had seen people close to death before, but something about this woman stirred something deep in him, something protective, something long buried. He worked through the night, tending her fever, forcing her to sip small drops of water. When dawn came, the woman was still breathing. Her color had returned slightly, and her lips moved as though forming words. "Where am I?" she murmured weakly. "Safe," Samuel replied simply. "You're at my cabin. My name's Samuel Grady. You were near dead when I found you." The woman tried to sit up but winced. My name is Clara, Clara West. I was on my way to meet my husband." "Husband?" Samuel asked, frowning. "Yes," she said softly. "I came from the east. I answered an ad, a mail-order bride posting. He was supposed to meet me in Cedar Bluff, but the wagon was attacked on the road." Her voice trembled. "I ran. I didn't make it far." Samuel's jaw tightened. He had heard stories of bandits preying on wagons carrying brides, traders, or anyone foolish enough to travel alone. "You're lucky to be alive," he said, his tone rough but kind. "Rest now. You can tell me the rest when you're stronger." Days passed. Clara slowly regained her strength, her spirit flickering back to life with each sunrise. Samuel hunted and cooked for her, patched up her dress, and even carved her a walking stick from an old oak branch. The cabin, once a silent shell, now hummed with the sound of laughter and conversation. Clara told him about her life back east, a lonely existence after her parents died, her desperation leading her to answer an ad from a rancher named Thomas Hale. He had promised her a new life, a home, and kindness. But when Samuel heard the name, something in his chest went cold. "Thomas Hale, you say?" he asked carefully. "Yes," Clara replied. "Do you know him?" Samuel didn't answer immediately. He turned to the fire, watching the flames curl and dance. Thomas Hale was a name he hadn't heard in years, but one he could never forget. Hale had been his commanding officer during the war, a cruel, greedy man who had betrayed his own men for gold and glory. Samuel had barely escaped alive when Hale abandoned their unit. The thought that this same man had lured a woman across the country made Samuel's blood boil. He kept the truth to himself for now. Clara was too fragile, too hopeful. But as she healed, Samuel's unease grew. He began to suspect that Hale hadn't sent for her out of love. Something darker was at play. One evening, while Clara was resting, Samuel rode into town to send word to Cedar Bluff about the attack. The sheriff, an old friend named Wyatt Boone, confirmed his worst fears. "Hale's not the man he pretends to be," Wyatt said grimly. "He's been wanted in 3 counties for land fraud, extortion, even assault. There's a bounty on his head. If your lady's supposed to be his bride, she's in danger." Samuel's fists clenched around the reins. "Then he's not getting near her." When he returned to the cabin, Clara was standing by the fire, her hair loose around her shoulders. She smiled softly when she saw him. "You look troubled," she said. Samuel hesitated, torn between protecting her and telling her the truth. "Clara," he began, "about the man you were supposed to marry, Thomas Hale isn't who you think he is." Her smile faded. "What do you mean? He's a wanted man, a liar and a killer. I knew him once, long ago. You're lucky you never met him." Clara's face went pale. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "I came all this way for nothing." Samuel knelt beside her. "Not for nothing," he said gently. "You're alive. That's something." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled softly, and Duke lay sleeping by the hearth. Then Clara reached out and took Samuel's hand. "Why did you save me?" she asked. He looked into her eyes, blue and searching. "Because no one deserves to die alone," he said quietly. From that night on, something shifted between them. They worked side by side, fetching water, chopping wood, mending fences. Samuel taught her to shoot, to ride, to live off the land. Clara, in turn, brought warmth back into his life. She sang as she cooked, tended his wounds when he returned from hunting, and made the lonely cabin feel like a home again. As winter deepened, so did their bond. Yet Samuel tried to keep his distance, afraid to hope, afraid to love again. He told himself she deserved a better man, a cleaner soul. But every time she smiled at him, his resolve wavered. Then one snowy morning, a shadow returned to their doorstep. Samuel had been out checking his traps when he saw 3 riders approaching the cabin. He crouched low, his rifle ready. Through the falling snow, he recognized the man leading them, Thomas Hale himself. He looked older, crueler, but those cold eyes were unmistakable. Hale dismounted and called out, "Samuel Grady, I know you're in there. Hand over the girl, and I'll let you live." Samuel's blood ran hot. "You'll get her over my dead body," he growled under his breath. Clara appeared at the window, eyes wide with fear. "Samuel, it's him." He turned to her. "Stay inside. Don't come out, no matter what happens." She grabbed his arm. "Please, don't fight him." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something inside him broke. "I won't let him take you, Clara. Not after everything." He stepped out into the snow, rifle in hand. The wind whipped through the pines, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Hale sneered. "You always were a fool, Grady. That woman's mine. She signed the contract." Samuel's voice was low and steady. "You've hurt enough people, Hale. You're not taking her." The men drew their guns. In a blur of movement, Samuel fired first. The echo thundered through the valley. One of Hale's men dropped. Instantly, bullets whizzed past him as he dove behind a log. Duke barked furiously, lunging toward one of the riders. The gunfight raged for what felt like an eternity. Samuel was hit once in the shoulder but kept fighting, driven by something stronger than pain, by love. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the riders lay still. Hale stumbled back, clutching his arm, his pistol slipping from his hand. Samuel advanced, rifle aimed squarely at the man who had ruined so many lives. "It ends here, Hale." The outlaw's eyes darted toward the cabin, then back to Samuel. "You think she'll stay with you? A killer, a broken man." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Maybe not, but at least she'll be free." He lowered his rifle slightly. "Go. Don't ever come near her again." Hale sneered, turned, and fled into the woods. Samuel watched until he vanished into the snow, then sank to his knees, exhausted and bleeding. Clara ran out moments later, tears streaming down her face. She knelt beside him, pressing her hands to his wound. "You fool," she whispered. "You could have died." Samuel smiled weakly. "Would have been worth it." She leaned in, her forehead against his. "Don't you ever say that. You saved me, Samuel. Twice now." He met her gaze, and in that moment, the years of loneliness melted away. Winter passed, and by spring, the world was green again. The cabin was no longer a place of solitude but of laughter and life. Samuel's shoulder healed, and Clara tended a small garden by the porch. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Samuel took her hand. "Clara," he said softly, "I don't have much to offer, just this land, this cabin, and a man who's made more mistakes than he can count. But if you'll have me." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You've already given me everything I ever wanted." Duke barked as if in approval, and Samuel laughed, a deep, hearty sound that hadn't escaped his lips in years. They married that summer, with the mountains as their witness and the wind as their song. And though the scars of their pasts never fully faded, they built a life on something stronger than pain, something forged in kindness, courage, and unexpected love. Years later, When travelers passed through those woods and asked about the old hunter and his wife, they'd hear whispers of a story, of a hound who found a dying bride, of a man who saved her, and of how love, against all odds, brought two broken souls back to life again. Because sometimes, the wilderness doesn't just take, it gives back. And for Samuel Grady and Clara West, it gave them a second chance neither thought they'd ever find.